Morning fog clung to Riverside Park like a held breath. The sun hadn't fully risen, painting everything in shades of grey and gold. A black woman in emerald green running gear moved along the trail, her footfalls steady against damp asphalt. She rounded the corner past the police memorial fountain when headlights cut through the mist. A squad car rolled forward, blocking the path. The engine idled, no siren, just presence. Chief Marcus Brennan stepped out, one hand resting on his belt. His uniform was crisp, his badge catching early light. "Morning," he called out, voice friendly but wrong. "You lost?" The woman slowed, pulling out an earbud. "Excuse me?" "I asked if you're lost." He moved closer, boots crunching gravel. "This park can be confusing for visitors." She held up her phone, the trail map clear on the screen. "I'm following the Greenway loop." "Is there a problem, officer?" "Chief," he corrected. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Chief Brennan. Been patrolling this park for 12 years. He glanced at her hotel keycard clipped to her waistband. "Staying downtown? Is that relevant?" Two more cruisers appeared from adjacent paths, flanking her position. Officers stepped out but hung back, watching. Brennan circled slowly, assessing. Riverside's a community park, mostly for residents, folks who live here. It's public property. Her voice stayed level. "I have every right to—" "You have the rights I say you have." The friendly mask dropped. "Now I'm going to need to see some identification. Make sure everything checks out." She reached for her driver's license, movements deliberate. He examined it under his flashlight, taking his time. Behind him, a white couple jogged past without slowing. Brennan waved at them. "Dr. Camille Warren," he read aloud. Atlanta address. "Long way from home." He keyed his radio. "Dispatch, run a check. Out-of-state ID, suspicious behavior near the fountain." "I'm jogging," she said quietly. "That's your story." He handed back her license. "Sit on that curb while we verify." She didn't move. "Am I being detained?" His jaw tightened. "You're being cooperative. Or you're being arrested for obstruction." "Your choice, doctor." She sat. The concrete was cold through her leggings. Morning joggers continued past, white faces unbothered. One nodded to Brennan like they were neighbors. A younger officer, badge reading haze, shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Dispatch crackled back. No warrants, no flags. Brennan seemed almost disappointed. He tossed her license onto the curb beside her. "Next time, find another park. Somewhere more appropriate." "Appropriate for what?" He leaned down, voice dropping. "People like you should know where you belong." The cruisers pulled away in formation, leaving her alone in the empty park. She stood slowly, memorizing his badge number. Her hands perfectly steady, but her heart was a war drum 12 hours earlier. Dr. Camille Warren had stood in her hotel room, reviewing case files that painted a damning portrait. Federal reports spread across the desk showed patterns no algorithm could miss. Racial profiling, unlawful stops, intimidation tactics disguised as community policing. The header on every document read the same: Riverside Police Department, Chief Marcus Brennan, Commanding Officer. She was the newly appointed Federal Oversight Director, sent to assess the department before her official Monday morning introduction. The assignment came from Washington with a clear mandate: investigate or dismantle. 3 previous departments under her review had chosen transformation. 2 had been forcibly restructured. Camille had arrived incognito, checking into the Riverside Grand under her own name with no announcement. She wanted to see the city as it was, not as it performed for federal scrutiny. The reports described a department where complaints disappeared into internal affairs like stones into deep water. She'd built her reputation on one principle: follow the numbers. Boston, Detroit, Philadelphia, each city had insisted their police culture was untouchable, rooted in tradition and brotherhood. She'd proven that culture was just another word for pattern, and patterns could be broken. The Riverside data was stark. Black residents comprised 12% of the population, but 68% of arrests. Traffic stops showed even sharper disparity. And at the center of it all, like a spider in a web, was Brennan. 23 complaints filed against him personally. 0 sustained investigations. She'd chosen to go for a morning run to clear her mind before the week ahead. The hotel concierge had recommended Riverside Park, calling it the jewel of the community. Camille had smiled at that. The complaints specifically mentioned the park as Brennan's preferred patrol territory. She wanted to see it for herself, wanted to understand what made this space so important to a man who treated it like private property. Now, as she laced her emerald green running shoes, she had no idea she was about to become another name in his pattern. The irony would only become clear in the morning. "I need you to stay seated," Brennan said, his tone shifting from false courtesy to command. The morning air suddenly felt thinner. Camille remained on the curb, watching him circle like a predator, confirming the trap. Officer Hayes stood 10 feet back, his hand nowhere near his weapon, but his posture rigid with discomfort. "You ran my license," she said calmly. "No warrants. No violations. So what exactly am I being stopped for?" Brennan crouched down to her eye level, invading her space. Discretion of the officer. "You know how it works, Doctor. I see something suspicious, I investigate." What was suspicious? My running? My clothing? Or something else? His eyes hardened. "Your attitude, for starters." Another jogger passed. A white man in expensive gear, clearly not a resident based on his tourist fanny pack. He didn't even glance their way. Brennan ignored him completely. The contrast was a slap without hands. "Let me guess," Brennan continued, standing. "You're going to file a complaint. Say I profiled you. Make this about race." He laughed, shaking his head. "That's always the play, isn't it? I haven't said anything about race. You didn't have to." He keyed his radio again. "Dispatch suspect is uncooperative. Requesting backup for potential trespassing violation. Trespassing on public. I determine what's public and what's not." His voice rose. "This is my park, my jurisdiction, my call." He gestured broadly at the empty trails. "You think you can just show up here in this neighborhood and nobody's going to ask questions?" Hayes finally spoke up. "Chief, maybe we should—" "Did I ask for your opinion, officer?" Hayes fell silent. Camille watched the young cop's face, seeing something flicker there. Shame, maybe, or recognition. She filed that away. 2 more units arrived, officers stepping out with practiced boredom. This was routine for them. Brennan walked over, speaking loud enough for her to hear. "Got another one. These people think the rules don't apply." "These people," Camille repeated softly. He turned back. "You got something to say?" She stood slowly, brushing dirt from her legs. "I'm saying that I know exactly what this is. I'm saying I see you clearly, Chief Brennan." His smile returned, predatory. "Is that a threat?" "It's an observation." He stepped closer, invading her space again. "Here's my observation. You're not from here. You don't belong here. And if I see you in this park again, you won't walk away with just a warning." He tapped his badge. "That's not a threat. That's a promise from someone with the authority to keep it." The other officers watched without expression, witnesses who wouldn't speak. This was theater, performance, a show of power meant to humiliate and deter. Camille recognized it from a dozen case files. Brennan handed back her license with exaggerated courtesy. "You have a blessed day now, Doctor. And remember, stay where you're welcome." The cruisers left in formation, engines rumbling. She stood alone beside the fountain, its inscription reading, "To serve and protect," in carved stone. The words felt like mockery. She pulled out her phone and photographed the fountain, the empty park, the direction the cruisers had gone. Then she photographed his badge number from memory, typing it into her notes. Chief Marcus Brennan. Badge 001 tomorrow. He would learn what authority really meant. Camille's hotel room was silent except for the coffee-maker's slow drip. She sat at the desk, hands wrapped around a cup she wasn't drinking. Outside, the city was waking up. Traffic sounds, distant voices, the rhythm of a Monday preparing itself. Her hands weren't shaking from fear. That would be easier. This was rage, pure and focused, the kind that burned cold. She'd experienced racism before, the subtle kind that hid behind smiles, the institutional kind buried in policy. But this was different. This was weaponized authority, deliberate humiliation, power as performance. Brennan had made her sit on that curb, not because he believed she was dangerous, but because he could, because he'd done it before, because no one had ever stopped him. She thought of her father, James Warren, the civil rights attorney who'd spent 40 years fighting these battles. He'd taught her young, institutions don't change through goodwill. They change through accountability, through documentation, through the slow grinding work of making power answer for itself. Her phone buzzed. A text from her deputy director. Confirmed for 9 a.m. arrival. Brennan's expecting you. Good luck, she almost laughed. Brennan was expecting Dr. Camille Warren, Federal Oversight Director. Clean suit, formal introduction, carefully staged meeting. He wasn't expecting the woman from the park. He'd already forgotten her, probably, just another face in a long line of people he'd dismissed. She opened Brennan's file again, spreading pages across the desk. 23 complaints, every single one marked unfounded or unsubstantiated by Internal Affairs, an Internal Affairs division that reported directly to him. The system investigating itself and finding nothing wrong, one complaint caught her attention. A black city councilman, stopped in Riverside Park 3 years ago, had filed a formal grievance. It was marked resolved with Brennan's signature, but there was no investigation summary, no interview notes, no resolution document, just his signature, like an eraser removing inconvenient truth. She looked at her reflection in the darkened window. Her father's voice echoed, "They think the badge makes them untouchable. Show them it doesn't." Tomorrow morning she would walk into that precinct, not as a victim, not as someone who could be dismissed with a wave and a warning. She would walk in as the person who held his career in her hands, and Marcus Brennan would finally learn where he belonged. Camille grew up in Atlanta during the 1990s, in a neighborhood where police presence meant tension, not safety. Her older brother, Marcus, the one she was named after before she transitioned the name to Camille, was stopped 47 times in 3 years. 47 times. She'd counted. Each stop was the same. You match a description. Never what description. Never what crime. Just the ritual of hands on the hood, license and registration, the casual violation of dignity disguised as procedure. The 48th stop was different. Officers found a bag of cocaine in the glove compartment during a traffic stop. Marcus didn't use drugs, never had. But the police report was definitive, the evidence logged, the arrest processed with mechanical efficiency. Her father spent 2 years fighting that case, peeling back layers of lies until he found the truth. The arresting officer had a pattern of planted evidence, a quota to meet. A career built on numbers instead of justice. Marcus was exonerated, but those 2 years had carved something out of him. That case taught young Camille 3 things. Power protects itself, institutions resist change, and documentation was the only weapon that couldn't be taken away. She studied law at Howard, then criminal justice reform at Yale. She learned to read budget reports like crime scenes, to find patterns in data that departments swore didn't exist. She became the director departments feared, the federal presence that couldn't be charmed or intimidated. Boston had tried to overwhelm her with paperwork. She'd hired forensic accountants and found phantom overtime covering for ghost patrols. Detroit had insisted their use of force was reasonable. She'd mapped every incident and shown a heat map that perfectly overlaid with majority black neighborhoods. Philadelphia had claimed their stop and frisk was colorblind. She'd subpoenaed body cam footage and let the cameras tell the truth. Now Riverside. Now Brennan, this assignment was different. The DOJ had flagged his department 6 months ago after a viral video showed officers tasing a black teenager for suspicious behavior. The suspicion being that he'd walked through a residential neighborhood after dark. The teenager was 14, walking home from a friend's house. Brennan had defended the officers publicly. My team acted appropriately given the circumstances. When pressed on what circumstances justified tasing a child, he'd smiled. We protect this community, period. That video had sparked protests. The protests had triggered federal review. And the review had landed on Camille's desk with a note from the Attorney General. Make this one count, she intended to. But she'd never expected to become part of the pattern herself. Another name in the long list of people Brennan had dismissed as not belonging. That stop in the park was personal now. And Camille had learned from her father, when power makes it personal, you make it permanent. Saturday evening, Camille accessed the federal law enforcement database with her director credentials. She started with Brennan's patrol logs, drilling down into data most people never examined. What she found made her stop breathing. Over the past 3 years, Brennan had personally logged 287 community security checks in Riverside Park. Not arrests, not citations, just stops. The logs were clinical. Suspicious individual detained, identified, released. Each entry took less than 2 lines. She cross-referenced with demographic data from the individuals identified. The pattern was mathematical in its precision. 92% black or Latino, 8% white, and those stops averaged 45 seconds, just long enough to check ID and move on. The black and Latino stops averaged 18 minutes, long enough to humiliate, long enough to send a message. She dug deeper, accessing incident reports filed by residents that never reached federal review. They were buried in the department's internal system, marked administrative instead of complaint, a category that didn't require federal notification. 74 reports. 74 people who'd filed formal complaints about Brennan's conduct in that park. Every single one disappeared into internal affairs and came out marked unfounded. One name appeared repeatedly in the reports: Officer Derek Hayes, the young cop who'd stood silent that morning. She pulled his personnel file. Hayes had filed 2 internal complaints about Brennan's conduct during stops. Both times the complaints were investigated by Brennan's hand-picked IA lieutenant. Both times Hayes was written up for failure to support fellow officers and conduct unbecoming. He'd requested a transfer last month to a neighboring jurisdiction. Brennan had denied it personally. Citing staffing needs, Camille sat back, the pieces assembling. This wasn't just abuse of power. It was a system built to protect itself, to silence witnesses, to erase accountability. Brennan had spent 12 years constructing a machine that processed complaints and produced silence. She opened a new file and began documenting everything. Federal pattern and practice investigations required proof of systematic violation, proof that this wasn't just bad judgment, but policy. Brennan had handed her that proof in patrol logs, internal reports and personnel actions. She thought about Hayes, standing silent on that curb, shame flickering across his face. He was leverage. A witness inside the system who'd tried to do the right thing and been punished for it. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number," she answered without speaking. "Dr. Warren?" A young voice, uncertain. "This is Officer Hayes. I need to talk to you. Before Monday. Before he knows you're here." She closed her laptop. "Where and when?" "There's a diner on 5th Street. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Come alone." The line went dead. Camille looked at the files spread across her desk. Brennan thought he'd won that morning. Thought he'd sent another person running, reinforced another invisible boundary. He had no idea what he'd started. Tomorrow morning she'd meet Hayes. Monday morning she'd walk into that precinct, and by Monday afternoon, Marcus Brennan's world would begin to collapse. Sunday morning, 7 a.m. The diner on 5th Street smelled like burnt coffee and decades of grease. Officer Derek Hayes sat in the back booth, still in civilian clothes, looking like he hadn't slept. Camille slid in across from him. No greeting, no small talk. You have 2 minutes to convince me you're not wearing a wire. Hayes looked up, surprised. Then he pulled out his phone, powered it off, and set it on the table. I'm risking my career being here. Maybe my safety at why, because what happened to you yesterday happens every week. And I'm tired of pretending it's normal. He pushed a manila folder across the table. These are copies. My personal records of incidents Brennan made disappear. Camille opened it. Incident reports, body cam timestamps, patrol logs. 3 years of documentation. Why keep these? My father was a cop. A good one. He taught me that the badge means something. Hayes's voice cracked slightly. Brennan makes it mean nothing. She scanned the documents. Each one showed the same pattern. Stop, intimidate, release. No arrests because arrests create records. No citations because citations can be challenged. Just power exercised and erased. I filed complaints, Hayes continued. Twice. Both times IA buried them. Then I got written up for insubordination. When I requested a transfer, Brennan blocked it. He met her eyes. You're here to investigate him. I want to help. Camille studied him. He was young, maybe 27, with the kind of face that still believed systems could work. If you testify, he'll destroy you. He's already destroying me. At least this way it means something. She closed the folder. Monday morning, I'm walking into that precinct as the new Oversight Director. Brennan doesn't know I was the woman in the park. Not yet. Hayes's eyes widened. That was you? That was me. Found everything you just gave me. This is exactly what I needed. She stood, taking the folder. Stay quiet. Do your job. When I call you, be ready. He nodded. For the first time since sitting down, he looked like he could breathe. Camille walked out into morning sunlight, the folder heavy with possibility. Brennan had spent 12 years building his kingdom. She had 72 hours to bring it down. Monday morning, 9 a.m. Camille walked into Riverside Police Department headquarters in a charcoal suit, federal credentials in a leather holder. The building was standard issue. Fluorescent lights, worn linoleum, the smell of burnt coffee and old paperwork. The desk sergeant looked up. Help you? Dr. Camille Warren, Federal Oversight Director. I'm here to see Chief Brennan. The sergeant's face shifted, recognition lighting up. Right, of course. Let me, he's expecting you. He picked up the phone, spoke quietly, then gestured toward the hallway. Second floor corner office? She climbed the stairs, aware of eyes following her. Officers in the bullpen glanced up, conversations stopping. She was the enemy here, the federal presence that could end careers. Brennan's office door was open. He sat behind his desk, laughing with 2 senior staff members about something on his phone. She knocked once and walked in. He looked up. His face drained of color in stages, first recognition, then shock, then rapid calculation. The laughter died. She extended her hand. Chief Brennan, Dr. Camille Warren, Federal Oversight Director. I believe we met yesterday. The senior staff members looked between them, confused. Brennan's recovery was quick. Too quick, the sign of someone used to controlling narratives. He stood, shaking her hand with a grip meant to intimidate. Dr. Warren, welcome to Riverside. His voice was smooth, professional. Yesterday was an unfortunate misunderstanding. I hope we can move past it. Can we? She didn't smile. You ordered me to sit on a curb, called me suspicious, told me to know my place. One of the senior staff shifted uncomfortably. Brennan's jaw tightened, but his tone stayed level. I was conducting routine patrol. If I was overzealous, I apologize. If? She let the word hang. Chief Brennan, as of this moment, the Riverside Police Department is under formal federal review for pattern and practice violations of civil rights. The room went silent. Brennan's mask slipped for a second, pure anger flashing through. Then it was back. the professional veneer. I look forward to cooperating fully. I'm confident we'll clear up any misunderstandings. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is an investigation. She opened her briefcase, pulling out a document. You'll receive the formal notice within the hour. I'll need access to all personnel files, patrol logs, body cam footage, and complaint records by end of business today. That will take time to compile. You have 8 hours. I suggest you start now. The senior staff members excused themselves quickly. Brennan waited until they left, then leaned forward. You can't do this because of one incident. I'm not. I'm doing this because of 287 incidents, all in Riverside Park, all following the same pattern. She watched his face. Did you think federal oversight meant I wouldn't do my homework? His hands gripped the desk edge. You're making a mistake. No, Chief. You made the mistake yesterday morning when you decided a black woman jogging in a public park was your problem to solve. She turned toward the door. 8 hours. Don't make me ask twice. The first week moved like progress. Brennan cooperated publicly, providing requested files with minimal delay. He held a staff meeting where he apologized for his error in judgment with Dr. Warren, calling it a teachable moment about unconscious bias. Officers seemed cautiously hopeful. The younger ones especially watched Camille with something like relief. Maybe things would actually change. Then Friday afternoon everything shifted. Officer Hayes knocked on her temporary office door. His face was pale, hands shaking. Dr. Warren, I need to tell you something. What happened? I've been placed on administrative leave. Effective immediately. He handed her the notice. Performance concerns. Brennan's ordering a fitness for duty psychological evaluation. Camille's blood went cold. Fitness for duty evals were a known tactic. Brand a whistleblower as mentally unstable. Discredit them before they could testify. When did this happen? An hour ago. Right after he saw me talking to you in the hallway yesterday. Hayes pulled a thumb drive from his pocket. This is everything. Body cam footage from 7 park incidents over 18 months. Every victim was black or Latino. Every justification was suspicious behavior. Not one resulted in arrest. She took the drive. Derek, he knows I talked to you. His people escorted me out through the back door so no one would see. His voice dropped. Dr. Warren, I'm expendable. You're not. Who's this? Before she could respond, 2 senior officers appeared in the doorway. Officer Hayes, time to go. They walked him out like a prisoner. Camille stood at her window, watching them escort Hayes to his car. Other officers watched too, the message clear. This is what happens to traitors. Her phone rang. The oversight board, calling for an emergency conference. She answered, already knowing what they'd say. The call lasted 30 minutes. Brennan's attorney, a former federal prosecutor with deep connections, had filed a motion arguing that Dr. Warren's personal involvement in an incident with Brennan compromised the investigation's integrity. They wanted her to recuse herself, hand the case to a neutral director. You have until Monday to provide preliminary findings, the board chair said, or we're reassigning this case. She hung up. Through the window, Brennan crossed the parking lot, talking on his phone, laughing. He glanced up at her office and smiled. He was winning. He knew it. Camille looked at Hayes's thumb drive. If she recused herself, this investigation died. Brennan's network would bury it in procedural delays and jurisdictional challenges. Hayes's evidence would be dismissed as bias from a disgruntled employee. Everything would go back to normal. The stops would continue. The complaints would disappear. And Brennan would keep patrolling his park, exercising his power, erasing anyone who didn't belong. Her phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. They're moving files tonight. Basement archive. Thomas D.H. Hayes was risking everything. Again. Outside, storm clouds gathered. Rain started, turning the parking lot into a mirror of brake lights and shadows. Camille opened her laptop and began drafting her response to the board. Not a recusal. A declaration of intent. If Brennan wanted war, she'd give him accountability. 2 a.m. Sunday morning. Camille sat in her hotel room, staring at her laptop screen. The cursor blinked in an empty document. Outside, rain hammered against the window like accusation. The Oversight Board had been clear. Recuse yourself or defend your objectivity. Brennan's attorney had painted her as an activist with a vendetta, someone who let one bad interaction cloud professional judgment. The narrative was taking shape. Overzealous federal director, personal grudge, witch hunt. She'd seen this playbook before. Attack the investigator, not the investigation. Make it about bias, not evidence. Turn documentation into doubt. But she'd never been on this side of it. Never been both the investigator and the victim. Never had to defend her objectivity while knowing exactly what Brennan's dismissal felt like. Hayes's thumb drive sat on the desk beside her laptop. 7 incidents, 7 victims, 3 years of systematic intimidation. But without Hayes to testify, it was just video, and video could be explained away. Context, Brennan's attorney would argue. Selective editing. Unrepresentative samples. She thought of her brother Marcus, sitting in a cell for 2 years because an officer needed numbers. She thought of her father, spending their savings on lawyers and investigators, fighting a system designed to protect itself. The system always protects itself. That's what makes it a system. Her phone sat silent. No calls from the board, no support from headquarters. She was alone in this hotel room at 2 in the morning, holding evidence that might not matter, and facing a choice that could end her career. If she recused herself, she stayed clean. Kept her reputation, her credibility, her future assignments. Someone else would handle Brennan eventually. Maybe, probably not. If she stayed, she became the story. Every decision questioned, every finding scrutinized for bias. Even if she won, Brennan's attorney would appeal, arguing tainted investigation. It could take years. She looked at her reflection in the darkened window. Her father's voice echoed, "The system protects itself unless someone makes it answer." Outside, rain turned to drizzle. Her phone buzzed. Hayes's text glowed in the darkness. "They're moving files tonight. Basement archive. 2:17 she checked the time. 2:17 a.m. Already too late, or exactly on time? Camille stood, grabbed her jacket and picked up the thumb drive. Objectivity was a luxury. Justice wasn't. Sometimes you had to be both the investigator and the witness. Sometimes personal was the only thing that mattered. She headed for the door, leaving the empty document blinking on her screen. Monday morning, 6 a.m. Camille sat in her car outside the precinct, phone to her ear. "I need authorization for a federal records seizure. Today, no advance warning." Her contact at the DOJ Civil Rights Division, Martin Chen, sighed. "Camille, the board wants you to recuse. If you escalate now, they're destroying evidence. I have a witness who says they're moving files from the basement archive to off-site storage." She didn't mention the witness was currently on administrative leave. "If I wait for the board to assign someone new, there won't be anything left to investigate. You're asking me to authorize a raid on a police department based on a tip from a source you won't name. I'm asking you to do your job. Pattern and practice violations, systematic civil rights abuses, obstruction of federal oversight. That's what the evidence shows." Silence on the line. Then, "If you're wrong about this, we're both done." "I'm not wrong." 30 minutes later, she had her authorization. Federal warrant for immediate seizure of all records related to complaints, patrol logs, body cam footage, and internal affairs investigations. No advance notice. No opportunity for the department to sanitize. She reviewed Hayes's body cam footage one more time. 7 incidents across 18 months. Every victim, black or Latino. Every location, Riverside Park. Every justification, suspicious behavior. In one clip, Brennan stopped a black woman pushing a stroller. "This is a residential area. Are you visiting someone?" The woman explained she lived 2 blocks away. Brennan kept her there for 12 minutes, asking for ID, questioning where she was going, why she chose this park. In another, a Latino teenager on a bicycle. "Do you have permission to be here?" The teen looked confused. "It's a public park." Brennan's response, "That's not what I asked." Every interaction followed the same script. Establish authority, question belonging, create discomfort. Never quite illegal. Always just professional enough to defend. But the pattern was unmistakable. She found the smoking gun in patrol logs Hayes had copied. An internal memo from 3 years ago, Brennan to his deputies. Maintain visible presence in Riverside Park area. Discourage loitering by non-resident demographics. Professional discretion advised. Non-resident demographics. Professional discretion. Coded language, plausible deniability. But paired with the stop data, 287 incidents, 92% Black or Latino, the intent was clear. This wasn't random policing. This was policy. Camille called her team, 4 federal marshals and a forensic data specialist. "We move in 1 hour. Full records seizure. Chief Brennan is not to access computers or files once we enter." She thought about Brennan's smile in the parking lot Friday afternoon. He thought he'd won, thought his connections and his attorney would make her go away. He was about to learn what federal authority looked like when wielded by someone who refused to disappear. 6 a.m. Tuesday morning. 4 federal marshals and a forensic data team rolled into the Riverside Police Department parking lot in 2 black SUVs. Camille stepped out, warrant folder in hand. Brennan was already there, coffee cup halfway to his lips. When he saw the convoy, the cup slipped. Coffee splashed across his uniform. She walked straight to him. "Chief Brennan, federal warrant for seizure of department records. You're required to provide immediate access to all digital and physical files." He grabbed the warrant, scanning it. "You can't just, I need to call my attorney." "Call him from your office." "We're going in now." She gestured to the marshals. They moved past Brennan like he was furniture. The desk sergeant stood. "Ma'am, you can't. Federal authority supersedes local command. Stand aside." Her voice carried through the lobby. Officers emerging for shift change froze, watching federal agents stream into their building. Brennan followed her inside, face red. "This is outrageous. You're targeting me because of one incident. This isn't about one incident. This is about 287 documented stops over 3 years. This is about 74 buried complaints. This is about a pattern of civil rights violations you've systematically covered up." She turned to face him. "Now where's the basement archive?" "I don't have to." "You do. Federal warrant, Chief. Obstruction carries its own penalties." A young officer, not Hayes, someone new, pointed toward a stairwell, basement level. Through the evidence room, the forensic team descended. Camille followed, leaving Brennan standing in his own lobby. Powerless. The basement was exactly as Hayes described. Rows of file boxes marked "Closed Complaints, Administrative." Dust covered everything, suggesting this archive was meant to be forgotten. The data team began imaging hard drives while Camille photographed paper files. She found what she needed in the 3rd box, the city councilman's complaint from 3 years ago. The one marked "Resolved" with no investigation notes. The file contained the original complaint, detailed and specific, describing exactly what Brennan had done to Camille. Same park, same tactics, same dismissal, and beneath it Brennan's handwritten note to his IA lieutenant. "Bury this. Councilman won't push. He's got his own issues." 3 hours later, Camille stood in the precinct conference room with 20 reporters, 5 cameras, and Brennan's attorney. She placed a folder on the podium. "Thank you for coming. I'm Dr. Camille Warren, Federal Oversight Director for the Riverside Police Department. I'm here to present preliminary findings from our civil rights investigation." Brennan's attorney started to object. She ignored him. Over the past 3 years, Chief Marcus Brennan personally conducted 287 stops in Riverside Park. 92% of those stopped were Black or Latino residents. 0 arrests resulted from these stops. No citations were issued. These were purely intimidation tactics. She clicked the projector. Hayes's body cam footage played. The woman with the stroller questioned for 12 minutes about her right to be there. This department received 74 formal complaints about Chief Brennan's conduct. Every single complaint was marked unfounded by an internal affairs division that reports directly to him. Not one was forwarded to Federal Oversight as required by law. Next slide, the internal memo. Discourage loitering by non-resident demographics. Reporters leaned forward. Cameras flashed. Brennan's attorney tried to speak. Camille talked over him. Yesterday morning, federal agents seized department records pursuant to court-ordered warrant. We found evidence of systematic suppression of complaints, retaliation against officers who reported misconduct, and a pattern of discriminatory policing targeting minority residents. She paused, meeting Brennan's eyes across the room. He stood rigid, jaw clenched. 1 week ago, Chief Brennan stopped me while I was jogging in Riverside Park. He ordered me to sit on a curb. He ran my identification. He told me, and I quote, "People like you should know where you belong." The room erupted. Questions flew. Brennan's face went from red to white. He did this not knowing I was the federal director, assigned to investigate his department. But here's what matters. He did it knowing he could. He did it because he's done it hundreds of times before without consequence. She played 30 seconds of body cam from that Sunday morning. Brennan's voice, cold and dismissive. "This is my park, my jurisdiction. You don't belong here." Chief Brennan's authority came from his badge. Today that authority ends. The Department of Justice is recommending his immediate suspension pending criminal civil rights charges. This department will undergo complete restructuring under federal oversight. A reporter shouted, "Chief Brennan, do you have a response?" Brennan stood frozen, his attorney whispering urgently in his ear. Finally, he walked toward the door. No statement, no defense, just silence. Camille watched him go. No more questions. "Thank you." The press conference dissolved into chaos. Reporters chasing Brennan, cameras following him to his car. Through the window, she watched him drive away from the precinct for the last time. Officer Hayes appeared beside her. He'd been reinstated that morning quietly, with no acknowledgement of the administrative leave. "Dr. Warren, thank you," she nodded. "You took the risk. This is your win too. What happens now?" "Now we rebuild. Every policy, every protocol, every aspect of how this department interacts with the community." She looked at the empty parking space where Brennan's car had been. "It'll take years, but it starts today." 2 months later, the morning sun hit Riverside Park differently, softer somehow, less accusatory. Camille walked the same trail she'd jogged that Sunday morning, but this time in civilian clothes, without purpose except to see. The police memorial fountain still stood at the corner, its inscription unchanged, "To serve and protect." The words felt less like mockery now, more like promise. Brennan had resigned under federal pressure, avoiding criminal charges by agreeing to never work in law enforcement again. His internal affairs lieutenant followed. 3 other senior officers took early retirement rather than face investigation. The department's restructuring was comprehensive. Body cameras mandatory and always on during public interactions. Civilian oversight board with subpoena power. Complaint processes completely redesigned to route outside the chain of command. Officer Derek Hayes had been promoted to lead the new Community Relations Division. His first action was hosting listening sessions in Riverside Park, inviting residents to share experiences without fear of retaliation. 70 people showed up the first week. That number grew. Camille passed a young black woman pushing a stroller along the trail. No officers appeared, no questions about belonging. The woman smiled, said good morning, kept walking. Progress was incremental, measured in moments like that. A walk without interrogation, a morning without fear. The system was changing because accountability had forced it to. Her phone buzzed. Hayes, first month data shows 67% reduction in minority stops. Community complaints down 83%. You were right, documentation matters, she smiled. Documentation mattered. But so did this. Standing in a park that was finally public, watching people move freely through space that had been claimed as territory. Her father used to say, change was slow. He was right. But he also said accountability was the first step. Make power answer for itself, and systems start to bend. Camille thought about Brennan wherever he was now. Probably bitter, probably blaming her, probably telling himself he'd done nothing wrong. She didn't care. His opinion wasn't relevant anymore. What mattered was that 287 stops would become 0. 74 buried complaints wouldn't be 75. And the next person who jogged through this park wouldn't sit on that curb. She walked toward her car, the morning light golden on her skin. Somewhere another department needed investigation. Another officer was abusing authority, thinking the badge made them untouchable. But now they knew, eventually someone would make them answer. Eventually accountability would come, and when it did, it would be thorough. 3 months after the press conference, Camille stood at the Riverside Park fountain one last time before leaving for her next assignment. The inscription had been updated. Below, to serve and protect, new words, with accountability to all. Small change. Significant meaning. She thought about what power meant in a democracy. Authority wasn't ownership. The badge wasn't permission to decide who belonged. Service meant protecting everyone, especially those most vulnerable to abuse. Brennan had forgotten that. Or maybe he'd never learned it. He'd treated the park like property, the residents like subjects, his authority like divine right. He'd built a system that answered to no one, that protected itself by erasing anyone who questioned it. But systems are built by people, and people can choose differently. Hayes had chosen to document instead of ignore. Camille had chosen to investigate instead of recuse. 74 complaint filers had chosen to speak instead of accept. Each choice was small. Together they became transformation. She'd learned something in Riverside. The hardest fights aren't against obvious villains. They're against systems designed to look reasonable, to defend themselves with procedure and protocol, to make abuse seem like discretion. Those fights required patience, documentation, the willingness to become part of the story instead of staying safely outside it. A family walked past. Black father, white mother, 2 biracial children. They spread a blanket near the fountain, unpacking a picnic. No one stopped them. No one questioned their presence. That was victory. Not headlines or press conferences. This, a Sunday morning without fear. Camille walked back to her car. Somewhere another department was failing its community. Another officer was weaponizing authority. Another victim was being told to know their place. But now there was precedent. Now there was proof that accountability could reach even the untouchable. She'd started this assignment as a target, sitting on a curb, being dismissed by a man who thought his badge made him God. She was leaving it as the architect of systemic change. Brennan had been right about one thing. She knew her place. Her place was standing exactly where power needed to answer. Her place was holding the badge accountable to the people it claimed to serve. Her place was making sure that belonging meant everyone, everywhere without exception. She drove away from Riverside Park as the sun climbed higher, casting light into spaces that had been shadowed too long. The work was never finished. But every department transformed was proof it was possible. The badge doesn't grant power. Accountability does. And everyone answers to it. No exceptions, no exclusions. Just justice finally visible in the light,